everyone. Thank you for joining us on Candid Chats All Things Wellness. I'm your host, Candid Mouton. We are here with Dr. Jaime Frederick, Doctor of Naturopathy, who has come back to join us for a segment on thyroid dysfunction and adrenal fatigue. We'd like to thank you for coming back today. Hello, Dr. Jaime.
Hey.
How you doing today?
Good.
Good.
Thanks for having me back. I was just overwhelmed, I think, a little bit with our last video. We had such a great response.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people have certain health questions about certain topics. And so today we're going to tackle the thyroid.
Yeah. This one actually came up a couple of times within people that I know and some of my clients. So I called her up and I was like, Dr. Jaime, can you talk about this subject? Because it seems like something that's actually very common. So here we are. All right, so let's get into it today. We're going to talk a little bit about what occurs within this vicious cycle that starts to happen in our bodies with stress and inflammation. And I'm going to have Dr. Jaime go ahead and talk a little bit about thyroids and adrenal fatigue and that stress cycle.
Yes, exactly. So really, you can't address one without addressing the other,
Right.
or actually getting a big picture of the whole body. So the thyroid adrenal hormone connection, basically it's all part of the endocrine system. Most people will kind of catch you on, I've got the thyroid diagnosis, or, I'm in extreme adrenal exhaustion. So again, you want to get the whole picture to see where people are. So the vicious cycle that you talked about, this has to do with chronic stress. Does anybody know what chronic stress is? Does anybody have chronic stress in their life? Right? That negatively impacts our adrenal system, the thyroid as well, and then eventually it leads to hormone imbalance of some sort. So the body doesn't recognize the difference between an actual threat, such as a bear trying to chase us, or if I just broke up with my boyfriend, or lost a job, or have home stress. Your body doesn't know the difference between that. So then we get caught in this cycle called the fight or flight cycle. I think most people are familiar with that.
I would think so, yes.
So what happens is, if you have this chronic stress in your life and you're not addressing it, you're not changing your situation, you're not setting healthy boundaries, then this chronic stress cycle continues. And what happens is your adrenals get stuck in the on position, like a light, like you turn a light switch on, right? And so the adrenals are constantly pumping adrenaline and cortisol into our system day and night. So that's why we have the issues with the belly fat, right? That's why we end up having sleep issues, not able to sleep well, not resting well, even if we are sleeping through the night. So again, that chronic stress will actually affect everything within the body.
I think for a lot of us, we kind of stuff everything, so we don't even realize that we're in a stressful situation. You could go to work every day and just be annoyed with a coworker or just your job and not even realize how much that's actually affecting you every day. So just because someone hasn't passed away or something tragic hasn't happened in your life, you could be in this cycle of stress every single day, and that's slowly depleting your body,
Just being a mom.
Yes.
I mean, can we be real here?
Yeah.
I have 3 kids, and it's a constant thing, right? And we love them to pieces, but it's stress, and then this busy lifestyle that we live nowadays. We have to go run everyone everywheres. There's after school this, there's weekend that, there's birthday parties, not having a healthy boundary within that and listening to your body, knowing that it needs to rest, creates an issue.
Yeah, and also not sleeping or not getting into a deep enough sleep, your body can never fully restore. So even just not sleeping properly is keeping your body in this vicious cycle.
Yeah, definitely. And so the not sleeping, not resting, a big one that is part of this vicious cycle is the gut and the digestive system. So what happens is we end up poorly breaking down our foods, or we end up developing food allergies or intolerances. Our gut bacteria might be off from a surgery or an antibiotic that we may have used. And even, if you're eating non-organic dairy and meats, you know, people don't realize, they're like, oh, I don't take antibiotics.
Right.
But if you're eating out a lot, you're not in charge of if it's organic or not, and most of the time it's not. If you are not purchasing, you know, organic grass-fed or, you know, dairy, beef, whatever it might be.
These cows are being injected with hormones.
Hormones and antibiotics.
Yes.
And then if you have like, you know, a farm and you have chickens, or your neighbor has chickens and they give it to you, if they're feeding it feed that has antibiotics in it, so it might be free range, but it's not.
You're eating what the animal is eating. Basically.
Exactly. So, you know, I just wanted to pinpoint even some of those things can affect your gut bacteria and create some issues. And if you're not breaking down your foods, that means you're not absorbing your nutrients and your minerals. Therefore, your thyroid, adrenals, and whole endocrine system is deficient in minerals that it needs to do its job.
And even just not having these daily bowel movements or regular movements, you're creating blockage in your gut.
Right.
Nothing can be absorbed or passed through. So that's causing a lot of issues as well.
Definitely. And not just that, but this chronic cycle will actually create inflammation. And so it'll affect your immune system as well as your inflammation markers. And if we're staying inflamed, then we're going to have pain. We're going to have all kinds of other things that are going to pick up as well too. You know, swelling.
Yeah, I think a lot of people may notice if they eat something that their body doesn't tolerate well, they'll wake up puffy or swollen. They'll start having digestive issues and feeling kind of sick. You may wake up feeling like you have a cold or a sinus infection, and actually you don't. You haven't caught anything. You just it's inflammatory response from something that you've eaten. Right. That your body can't process.
And what we found is that 80% of your immune system is in your gut. So if this gut is not healthy, then your immune system's going to be low. That's when we start to look at chronic infections that might be associated with these thyroid adrenal issues.
Absolutely. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what do you want to talk about? The thyroid dysfunction, hypo and hyper? Or?
You know, I just want to park for just a minute or two and talk about the endocrine system and how it functions, you know, because there are some people that are listening that kind of want to know that. If you're like, you know, they want to know the information. So your endocrine system is actually, it consists of glands that produces hormones. So it's not just your thyroid, it's not just your adrenals, but there are other glands that are part of that, right? So the thyroid itself, because that's mainly what this topic is about today, the thyroid itself is one of the largest glands that produces T3 and T4 for the most part, right? So your thyroid will actually store some of these hormones until it's needed. And this is the biggest thing that I found fascinating, is we think of our thyroid as our thyroid, right?
Right.
But we don't realize that it's actually, it affects our cardiovascular system, our central nervous system. It also affects our gastrointestinal, metabolic, respiratory, and skin.
Were we having a conversation prior, and you were saying how if a person is dealing with thyroid dysfunction and adrenal fatigue, they are more likely to have cardiovascular issues, especially in women?
Exactly, yes. Because, I mean, you know, cardiovascular issues in women, we know that it's a higher rate for us, so we have to be extra careful. And so what happens is when you're in that, you know, the adrenal gland switch being on, stuck in the on position, you're constantly pumping that cortisol and adrenaline, right? So then what happens is your adrenals get tired pretty quickly, and then it puts extra pressure on your thyroid. So the thyroid's now doing the job of the thyroid and some of the adrenal stuff, and then after a while that can actually affect your cardiovascular health too. So heart palpitations, some of those things may be happening at that point.
Do you find that more with people who've had their thyroid removed?
You know, I guess it can be sometimes
because
that
they're
way.
lacking that filter.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly, because you're kind of missing a vital part. So, and then how does the adrenal stress affect the thyroid? So, cortisol, most of you are familiar, you've probably seen those
belly fat
infomercials. The belly
cortisol
fat.
produces belly fat.
I think everybody knows what cortisol is, right? So cortisol, that actually decreases the TSH, which lowers the thyroid production, and cortisol will inhibit the conversion of T4 to active T3. So it also at the same time increases the conversion of T4 to reverse T3. So all those big names, you know, all that kind of stuff, those hormones, that's why your medical doctors are checking for those things. If they do a thyroid panel, they're going to be looking for that kind of stuff. You know, I don't do a whole lot of blood work because the biofeedback really tells me where you are in the cycle. We can track it for those of you that that choose to. I do order labs for the clients that want it, but most of the time I find it's not that necessary. So the whole HP axis, you know, that's the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, right? This is basically the system that helps you to respond to stress. So again, if your adrenals are stuck in the on position, it's definitely affecting this whole axis. And since the hypothalamus, which is part of that axis, the hypothalamus is in your brain, so therefore the problem begins in the brain with the neurotransmitters. So what's a common thing that people say whenever they can't, whenever they're dealing with thyroid and adrenals is serotonin levels, right?
They're not sleeping.
So they're not sleeping.
Brain fog.
Exactly, not able to focus, poor memory, that kind of thing. That's why those things are affected even when it's a thyroid or adrenal issue. It's because of this axis that works together.
Right. Just staying stuck.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean basically the stress will impact both the adrenal and the thyroid pathways. An excessive amount of this can cause inflammation in the brain as well as raising cortisol levels, having increase of belly fat, and inhibiting your metabolism. So overall,
I think a lot of people, when they start a detox process, they realize that they can think clearer.
Oh yeah.
And that brain fog just starts to lift. And I think that's the first sign of them becoming healthier.
Yes.
When they're not getting the headaches or the brain fog anymore, they're realizing that something is shifting in their body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you start to address the right part of the problem, then you start to get results.
Right.
I mean, how many people do you know that are on thyroid medications that tell you, I don't really notice a difference.
Yeah.
I'm still tired. I still have these issues. And then, you know, so it's not going to necessarily fix it. And I realize some people have had their thyroid removed, so they don't even have a thyroid to stimulate. I get that. And so, you know, some of my clients are on medication, and they will be, but you can still have a better quality of life, and you can still fix the other parts that are not working.
Yeah, because other things start to lack.
It's not just the thyroid.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the symptoms of hypo and hyperthyroid?
So hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism, those are the two main categories when you're dealing with thyroid issues. Most people will recognize hypothyroidism because this is where you have a decrease in your metabolic activity. So basically a lower metabolism, a slower metabolism. Also, this is poor tolerance of cold temperatures. These are your people that are freezing all the time, right? Then we have weight gain that's associated with that. And typically you're going to have gut movement that's sluggish, which is constipation. So most people in this area, everything's moving slower. And then you get very easily fatigued. So a simple trip to the grocery market might wear you out, right? And stuff that you used to be able to do in, you know, a whole day's worth of
daily activity makes you feel like you need a nap.
Exactly. So if you're at that point, then more than likely you've been having some issues in this whole area. Also, it will affect your heart and respiratory rate. Sometimes blood pressure will actually decrease, and mental alertness such as speech, poor memory, and brittle, dry, or sparse hair, so the hair that's thinning and falling out. And the last thing that I found kind of interesting is that you can have a slow, husky voice. So you hear those women that talk with that low voice, you know, that's not typical necessarily.
I think the most common one that I see is the weight gain and the hair loss, for sure. The two
and the body temperature usually too.
Yeah, affect women the most.
So that's hypo. That's going to be on the sluggish side. But then we have the opposite end of the spectrum, which is going to be hyperthyroidism. This is when your thyroid's hyper. It's overacting. You're going to get an increase in your metabolism. Your temperature typically will be elevated. You'll be more flushed and hot. And this is not to be confused with menopause or hormonal stuff and their female hormones. This is going to be more with your thyroid. Appetite increases, but weight decreases. And sometimes you'll have gut activity that will increase, like diarrhea. So things just kind of run right through you. You can never seem to hold anything down. Heart palpitations, high blood pressure, muscular tremors, and nervousness. This is your very excitable person, the one that's always running 90 to 100, you know?
Yes.
And they come in the room and sometimes you're like, whew,
too much energy.
A big ball of energy, right? And they don't mean to be that way. That's just that their thyroid is just in dysfunction. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, hopefully this will kind of help you relate to one or the other, you know?
You're either really, really up or you're really, really down.
Yeah, exactly. And so there are some other systems. If you get in this cycle for long enough, and again, if we don't address it, then it will actually affect your detoxification pathways. Mm-hmm. So if you're staying constipated, then again, your liver, your pancreas, all these other digestive organs will become affected, and you'll start to have a problem with not being able to eliminate, and then your gut becomes a mess too.
So it's holding all these toxins inside.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And a big thing too is that when you're stuck in this adrenal cycle, your body is going to be deficient in vitamin B6 and vitamin C. Mm-hmm. So those are two very important ingredients that your body needs to be able to produce glutathione. And glutathione helps our liver and our body with detoxification so that we don't feel like we're detoxing, right? So it's very important to keep in our eliminatory pathways open.
I think one of the things that we talked about earlier that's really beneficial for everyone is that a lot of times we are exhibiting or experiencing a lot of these symptoms, but they just kind of become our everyday norm, and we just live with them. But it doesn't mean that they are actually normal. So if you're having headaches every day, or you're sweating or cold, or, you know, you're not in balance. So you just kind of got to peel back the layers and figure out exactly when all this started, where the imbalance started to occur, and then that way you can help them supplement before they get to a point of actually having to remove a thyroid, or actually having to be on long-term medication because of it.
And that's the thing too. I find most of my clients, when they're coming into my office, the number one thing I'm doing is reconnecting them with themselves, because I think we live in such a busy day and age that we think, oh, I have a headache, I'm going to go grab a Tylenol, or I'm going to do this. So that's called putting a Band-Aid on it.
Pacification.
There's a reason you're having a headache, right? You don't want to just quiet it down and say don't do that. The pain's still there, you just can't feel it.
You need to figure out what's causing the headaches.
Exactly. You want to know the root cause of it. And it's the same thing with our thyroid and adrenals. You don't necessarily go get on thyroid medication and say, oh, that's what I have to do, right? There are other ways to be able to correct the problem.
Very good. All right, so we talked about some other systems that are affected by thyroid dysfunction. The gastrointestinal, causing you to not absorb nutrients properly, not eliminate properly, causing toxicity in the body.
And so even if a person is eating right, they're eating very healthy, but if they're not breaking down their foods, then you're not absorbing those nutrients. So I get people that come in all the time and they're like, I eat perfect, I'm hydrated, I drink enough water, but they're not, maybe they're missing a key component, which is the gut-brain connection. And so that's where probiotics, digestive enzymes come in, and digestive enzymes help you break down the food, remember? Probiotics put in the good gut bacteria so that it boosts your immune system and it can fight off some of those other bad bacteria.
Especially if you've been on antibiotics or something else that has depleted all of that in the body.
Yes. And did we talk about 80% of the immune system being in the gut?
I don't think so.
So that's huge. I mean, if you're not addressing your gut issue, it's going to affect everything in the body. And again, this is why if your gut is messed up, it affects the brain. So you're going to have issues with focus and memory and sleep. All of that has to do with good gut health. And also 95% of serotonin is in the gut.
Really?
And serotonin is what helps you to relax and sleep good. So if your serotonin levels are affected in the gut, then of course they're going to be affected in the brain.
And I deal with a lot of sleep apnea patients, and I know we talk to them about that because if they're eating carbohydrates late at night or sugar late at night or even drinking wine, they're getting up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night because that cortisol response is kicking in and the body's trying to eliminate. You know, so it just everything actually puts you into a cycle if you're eating carbs, sugar, anything that throws your body into an inflammatory response.
Yeah, and I think that kind of segues perfectly into our foods that we were going to talk about and the dependency. I mean, think about it when you're on thyroid. You're in the thyroid adrenal cycle, then you're going to become dependent most of the time on coffee to wake you up.
Yes.
And caffeine midday to keep you awake, and then sometimes we need wine to be able to wind down, and or alcohol to help us go to sleep, right?
And that's actually the norm for so many people. They've seen their parents do it, you know, their friends do it. So what we're here to tell you is that is not normal.
Right.
So you should actually sleep, wake up feeling refreshed, ready to take on the world. You should not feel like you have to have coffee or like you're groggy and angry until you actually have caffeine.
Yeah, those mugs that say don't talk to me till I have my coffee. They probably have thyroid adrenal issues.
Yeah, it really is not normal. And having to drink wine or alcohol to calm down at night or to relax you, you know, your body should be in a state of balance. So we need to really look at these things that you are fueling your body with throughout the day just to have some sort of normalcy or to get you through every day, and try to wind back on some of that.
Yeah, so I mean, if you are one of those people that you're like, you know, watching this video is making you kind of self-evaluate, like, I think I do some of that stuff.
We're not judging at all.
No, I like wine and I like coffee the same as everyone else, you know, but it's in moderation.
Right.
And the whole thing is when you start to realize that and uncover that these are the root issues, is that you're mineral deficient.
Right.
So, I mean, there are large people, overweight people that come into my office and they're actually malnourished.
Yes.
So it is a thing to be overweight and still be malnourished. You're not getting the nutrients, and that's why you're holding on to the body weight. So once you realize that and you start feeding your body what it needs and balancing some of those systems, you can get back to a balance for sure.
Right. And I think we talk about some of the different foods that are beneficial and are not beneficial to their bodies.
Right.
Because on our last show, we had talked about how you could even be eating some healthy things like blueberries and carrots and whatnot, and they actually may not be something that's tolerable for you. So this will actually help you to understand that there are some things that are beneficial for people with thyroids, and there are some things that are not beneficial for people with thyroid issues. So
basically for thyroid, you know, things like butternut squash, spinach, watercress, broccoli, these are great foods that contain tyrosine. But the problem is most people that are stuck in that crazy cycle, they're not breaking down their food properly. So sometimes when you're eating these good nutritious things, they can actually become a stressor to the body. So what you want to do is you want to eat them, but you need to lightly steam or cook them to get that, you know, that whole thing opened up so that it can break down properly and activate those enzymes.
It's easier to process.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, some of the foods that you want to avoid is a lot of processed foods. I mean, think about it. When you're running and, you know, you're a soccer mom, or, you know, you're out there and you're ripping and running and you're going from work to school to whatever, you are tired. You don't feel like taking the time to cook a long, healthy meal. Sometimes you're picking up fast food, or, you know, so you're eating a lot more processed things, and your body's having to work extra hard to get nutrients from it, and sometimes it just doesn't get it.
And a lot of times we're buying things that we think are healthy, but they're still processed food, and they still actually contain natural flavors or things that are listed as natural that really are not, and our body's having to process all of that. Yeah,
so processed foods, dyes, genetically modified, GMOs, bad fats, so that would be like your French fries and, you know, potato chips. Again, avoiding these caffeine and alcoholic, you know, sugary things that create the up and down with the energy, the crashes and the spikes, right? Artificial sweeteners is a big one, right?
Yes, let's talk about that for a second. So A lot of doctors actually used to tell people to use artificial sweeteners because of diabetes and other health issues or weight loss. And actually, if we see a lot of people, they're putting 8 to 10 packets of Splenda or Sweet and Low into their beverages, and
or doing Diet Coke.
Diet Coke is a huge one. I mean, you have Coke and you have an artificial sweetener, so that's two really unhealthy things that you're consuming, thinking you're taking something healthy because it says diet on it.
Right.
So a lot of these things are very misleading. Using artificial sweetener, those can cause inflammatory responses, fibromyalgia, they're cancer-causing agents. So there's so many negative things with these artificial sweeteners. And I think you could have a whole segment on why that's unhealthy for you. So just think about it, if you're using that.
Honestly, I'd rather you have the sugar than the artificial sweetener.
Right, because your body knows what to do with the sugar.
Exactly.
Your body doesn't know what to do with these chemical compounds.
And things like, not Splenda, the other one, Sweet and Low. Things like Sweet and Low, they're actually a neurotoxin. So it will attack your nerves and your nervous system. And if you are already in that thyroid adrenal cycle, then your nerves are already stressed.
And I feel like people get very addicted to that as well. That's why they need more 2-packs,
3-packs,
6-packs. It's like never enough. You see them tearing up like the whole
thing. Or they go to
thing.
Sonic and they're like, the Route 44.
Yes. Oh my. Okay. Yeah.
So we're relating to some of y'all out there.
Yes, those eight Diet Coke a day people. That's a real thing. They're really addicted to diet sodas.
So again, no condemnation. We're not fussing. No. We are just awakening you, connecting you with what your body's going through, what it's actually trying to tell you through symptoms, and what it's needing. And it doesn't need the caffeine, it doesn't need the sugar, it doesn't need the alcohol. It needs nutrients, it needs protein. So when you actually start feeding it those things, the cravings are going to go away. I mean, of course, you have to go through that detox, right? The headache, the caffeine headaches when you start, getting away from it. But usually 2 or 3 days, and you're over the hump.
And that's where a lot of people tap out.
Yeah.
They start detoxing and they start getting these headaches, and they're like, I need caffeine or I'm going to get headaches. And I'm like, no, you need to stay off the caffeine because you're addicted to it, and that's why you're having headaches, because your brain is like, I want this.
Yes. And so, those of you just tuning in now, we're talking about headaches and caffeine and all that kind of stuff, but all of it ties into the thyroid adrenal function and ultimately will affect our hormone imbalances.
Yes, absolutely.
So those are foods that you want to avoid. Another big thing is these food sensitivities and intolerances. They don't just start out of the blue. You're somewhere, again, in this adrenal thyroid cycle. And mycotoxins is a huge one. So people, especially here in South Louisiana, we have a ton of that. That's fungi, mold, yeast, those types of things,
every day.
And so corn, think about how corn is grown and how it's stored. We don't grow a lot of corn here, but up north they do, and it's stored in these big bins, and there's a lot of mold that can grow in there, right?
And we eat a lot of corn in all kinds of different ways.
And not to mention the genetically modified part of that, and the, glyco, I always say that wrong. Glyphosate.
Glyphosate,
yeah. So, I mean, that's a huge one. That's Roundup, basically. So you add all that in, and corn's just a very much of a trigger. Gluten, sugar, hard cheeses, even cheese, it's a dairy product, but then on top of that, you've got some of the mycotoxins that come with it. So these may be triggers that you're eating, and you've got the thyroid adrenal issue, but you're not even related to the gut problem, and these are triggers which will cause inflammation in general. Another thing about fruits as well, most people are doing like healthy smoothies in the morning, right? Well, we're not realizing that things like bananas, raisins, dates, oranges, and grapefruit, these things can be adding to your inflammatory responses if you're not careful, and then they also have a lot of sugar in them. So even if you're not doing the caffeine in the morning, but you're doing a smoothie, there's a ton of sugar in that.
I do a plant protein based smoothie from Sun Warrior, and I do put a banana in it because I heard the bananas act as a prebiotic to the probiotics in it.
Right.
So that was my thinking behind that, but it's The bananas actually are creating an inflammatory.
It could be.
It could be creating.
Yeah, and so this isn't one size fits all for everyone, but these are just some things that may be triggering. So for you, maybe a half a banana might be okay for you. It might not be a big deal because you don't eat a whole lot throughout the day. You're busy massaging, so you're moving, you're active, so you might not have that problem like someone else might. So yeah, I mean, those are the things that you want to try to avoid.
Very good. All right, so we're talking about foods to avoid, or actually foods that are beneficial as well for people with thyroid and adrenal fatigue issues. If you are interested in any of this, you can set up a scan with Dr. Jaime. She actually does food intolerance scans. So not only can she check all of your organs with the scan, she can even give you a great list of foods that are beneficial and foods that are not beneficial to your body.
Yeah, so I think overall, if you could take anything from this video, it's to be more aware of what you're putting in your body, be more aware of your habits and how you can change them. And if you are on a thyroid medication or you don't have a thyroid or wherever you fall in that cycle, it doesn't mean that that's the end of the road for you. I think taking a look at the big picture in general is going to give you a whole lot more to work on, because again, it's more than just the thyroid, it's more than just the adrenal. You have a whole body system that's working together. So coming in for the scans is what I would recommend if you can, because we'll get to sit down one-on-one. I'll be able to pinpoint some things and give you some answers, but also pair your body with the right supplements for where you are right now. So there are some things that we can do for people, or suggest for people that can't come in necessarily. I have a couple of products that I'll run through real quick. What can you do for your body now?
And this is what I also wanted to say was, no matter where you are in the cycle, you know, Dr. Jaime can definitely consult with you and help you.
Oh, definitely.
So, you know, whether you've had a thyroid removed or whether you're just exhibiting some of the symptoms that we talked about earlier today, which would be ideal because she can actually help you to stop the process before it gets to the extreme, you know, removing a thyroid or something like that.
Well, and you know, that reminds me, I'm glad you said that. We are not just seeing thyroid adrenal dysfunction with busy, overworked adults. We are actually seeing it in children now, especially kids that are on the autism spectrum or ADD, ADHD, kids that have had birth trauma. I mean, think about it. They are born into trauma, fight or flight. Yeah. And so we see that very commonly. That's the over energy, like the negative energy that's in there. They're bouncing off the walls. They can't think, they can't focus, they can't concentrate. All of that, guys, is adrenal fatigue or exhaustion. That
overstimulation.
Yes, and eventually, with those kids, it's going to affect their thyroid if they're not addressing it. So we're seeing an epidemic here where it's not just your American, overworked person. Right.
And I think something really great that I've learned just in dealing with my daughter and all the patients that I know that you've had consults and helped treat was that a liver cleanse is really great for almost any ailment. So basically, if you can just do a liver cleanse, a proper liver cleanse, and get the body jump started, then you can actually start your journey of healing. So show us some of the great things that you brought.
So, just to segue into that too, those of you that are tuning in out there and you heard Candid say, doing a liver cleanse is good, I want to caution you to be careful. Don't just go out there and purchase some herbal liver detox just because it says it's good or whatever. If you are truly in this stuck state of adrenal thyroid fatigue, hormone issues, most of the time that means you've been there for a while, and sometimes going on to just a herbal detox can make people sick. We talked a little bit about that last week.
Right.
So then sometimes people get scared and they're like, oh no, it made me sick, it didn't work.
The body's not fully processing it, or it's getting stuck in certain organs, right? It can't digest through.
Right, exactly. It's stuck, it's not pushing through, and like we talked about, the glutathione being an important part. So again, someone in the adrenal thing, not having vitamin B6 and vitamin C is not making glutathione. Therefore, it clogs their pathways.
Right.
So if you have clogged pathways, this is what I'm going to recommend. So anyone that's tuning in, I've used this with children as well as adults. I've taken it myself several times. This is the most comprehensive detox that I've seen and the most gentle because it's homeopathic. So remember what we talked about last week with the homeopathics being a gentle signal to the body to remind it to do something. So almost like a gentle CPR, whereas an herb will go in and push it through, or it'll try to push it through, and if it gets stuck, then we have a problem, right? So this particular one, it's by Des Bio. We carry this in our office, and it's called a comprehensive homeopathic detox. So this comes with 6 little bottles, and it is very simple to use. It's drops that go under the tongue. The first part of it is going to cleanse the brain, the spine, and the cells. So you are actually pulling toxins from all those areas. So the brain, we have heavy metals that tend to clog up there and affect our neurotransmitters. The spine holds viruses and bacteria, and then the cells hold all kinds of junk, right?
Right.
So the body will work with those 3 things, and then so we'll pull from that, and then we'll actually push and open up the pathways of the liver, the kidneys, the colon, and lymphatic system. So that's what this particular cleanse does. Again, because it's homeopathic drops, you can take only a few drops if you want to be very gentle. You can work your way all the way up to the full dose that they recommend. So that's the beauty of homeopathy, is that you really have control, and you can ease your way into it.
How long does this detox kit take?
It usually is 6 to 8 weeks if you take it as directed, so it is a little bit of a process. They do recommend that you adjust your diet with some of the things that we mentioned earlier: less sugars, less carbs, less starches, alcohol, caffeine. You know, the more you do there, the better your cleanse will be. This also does parasites. I mean, it does everything. So we do have a complementary product that goes with this one. It's called Omni Cleanse capsules. And this has the glutathione and the vitamin C and the vitamin B6 that we talked about that you're missing. And so this helps to ease the detox. So if you are having any kind of symptoms with the detox, whatever that might be, a slight headache, a little bit of stomach indigestion, whatever that might be, this is going to reduce that. So again, super gentle. So if you're tuning in and you're not sure where to start, this would be a great thing to start with. And then if you want to come in for your scan after that, that would be fine too. We do also have a few other complementary products. Typically when you're detoxing, I recommend that you kind of focus on that so you don't get overwhelmed. However, I have 2 products here. One of them is called Thyrosyn, so Thyrosynergy. This is a really good thyroid product. So even if you're on a thyroid medication, you could take this and support it. This has things like iodine, selenium, ashwagandha, milk thistle, and it is a glandular, so it has a few glandulars in there to help your thyroid rebuild itself, if you will, because sometimes you actually, you know, kind of eat away at some of those pieces when it's been inflamed for a while. So this can be a really good one. You will start to notice energy increase, less stress, maybe hair loss kind of diminishes, that kind of thing. We also have the Adrenal Synergy. So this is one that I take regularly. I love this one. I took it today before I came to this interview because, you know, public speaking is a stress, right? So this particular Adrenal Synergy, this has vitamin C, B6, folate, pantothenic acid, zinc, and it also has several herbs that are in it as well as a few glandulars. And this is amazing, guys. It really helps to get you through some of that fight or flight. It kind of turns the fight or flight off, right? We talked about the adrenals being stuck on. This is one of the things that can help you to turn it off so that you can do the rebuilding process of it. And lastly, this is one of the products that I've been using for years. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
Okay. This is one that I've been using for years. It's called Soul Vital. This is a phenomenal way to be able to replenish all those vital nutrients and minerals that we talked about. This will get people out of a funk quick. It's like lifeblood.
Right.
You know, it oxygenates you. It opens things up. It's got vitamins and minerals in an organic form that's readily absorbable. And we talked about people that take multivitamins.
Yes.
If your gut is not working and you are not breaking things down, you are not absorbing that multivitamin.
Right.
You're probably urinating it out. So a product like this is huge for the body, especially someone that's in thyroid adrenal exhaustion. So this will replenish all those things, and it also has a mood stabilizer in it.
Nice.
So this is kind of like an everything in one. So if you did the OmniCleanse detox that we just talked about, and you did Vital, those two things would be enough to get you through for a while. Then we can take a look at the bigger picture and see where we are.
Okay, very good. So if they want to come in for a consult, they can do that at your office.
Yes.
And if they want to just try some of the supplements, they can actually get those online or at your office as well?
Exactly. So if you're interested in any of these products that I mentioned here today, we do have a full supplement store in office as well as online. So you can purchase those and we can ship them to you. Or you can come into our store and get a little bit of one-on-one with us if you'd like. I do highly recommend at some point that you do a full scan with me. So that we can get information for where your body is. That eliminates you spending money on products that you don't really need. These products that I brought today, anybody can benefit from them, and they're a good place to start. But if you're spending hundreds of dollars on supplements, you know, going to the store and just kind of looking, staring at the wall, you may not need all of those things, or you may not even be absorbing them.
Right. And even just increasing your quality of life, you know, instead of spending money on $6 coffees, bottles of wine, sodas throughout the day, invest in yourself and use that money towards getting supplements that will actually help to rebuild and replenish and rejuvenate your body.
Yes, that's the biggest thing I could say is love yourself.
Yes.
Spend the money on yourself. You are worth fixing, because honestly, if you are not taking care of yourself, if you're not setting healthy boundaries in relationships and helping reduce some of that chronic stress, then you're not going to be valuable to anyone else. You're not going to be able to add value to them. So if I don't take care of myself, I can't give to my patients what they need, because then I'm depleted, right?
You have to keep your cup full.
Exactly.
Yes. You cannot pour from an empty cup, as they say.
Yes, so if you would like to get information from us, our address is 617 Garber Road in Broussard, Louisiana. Our phone number is 337-456-6754, and we also have a website that they can order from. It's gardenoflifehealth.com, and we'll go ahead and add that into the post here at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. So also, we will be posting this a couple of times, so anytime you see the video up, you guys can actually ask questions. Dr. Jaime and I will be monitoring our pages. We'll be answering any questions that you may have, or you can actually reach out to either one of us. I'll get you in contact with her, or you can directly contact her yourself and set up a consult or a product.
Yes, and lastly but not least, our disclaimer.
Yes.
So this video is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure any illness. This is just for informational purposes. And so there, I've said it.
Do what you will with it, and I hope that you all will start investing in yourself and taking care of yourself. Thank you so much for coming in again today, Jaime, and
You're welcome.
I look forward to doing a couple more interviews with her. So if you guys have any other topics that you would like discussed, you can reach out to me and let me know, and we'll see if she'll hop on board and give us some good advice. Thank you all for joining us on Candid Chats today. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.
You too. Thank you.